welcome. Thank you so much for spending your Thursday night with us. I know that I speak on behalf of my fellow commissioners. Commissioner Patrick Kelly and Karen Willie are also here, and on behalf of our incredible staff who are here, to say that we really hope that you enjoy this chance to share your feedback, clarify your questions, and maybe even have a chance to meet some new friends here tonight. I personally love meeting new friends. Been making friends all my life with strangers, so I'm excited to see some new faces and familiar faces. And I also really love civic discourse in action, so I'm excited about this town hall, how many folks showed up, and the way that we have it formatted to really hopefully be able to hear from a lot of folks and then have some further discussion. So I just a little bit of background about kind of what got us here. When I was elected 2 years ago, alongside former Commissioner Shannon Reid, the question of whether or not there should be 5 seats at the Douglas County Board of Commissioners became a pretty regular point of conversation for each of us with our respective constituents. In due time, after our swearing in, Chair Portillo at the time was really who helped to continue those conversations in our commission chambers and give a truly public forum to discuss it more with residents and bring the idea to more folks who weren't talking about it yet. Fast forward to a listening session that we had on the topic, many presentations by Jamie Shew to walk us through the sort of complicated statutory requirements to some degree about what this would look like, and then putting it on the ballot with a unanimous resolution and vote of the county commissioners, and then an election, and here we are tonight. So our residents who voted made their request clear, so let's redistrict. To me, and I think my fellow county commissioners would agree, this is an opportunity for increasing representation, along with fostering more engagement with and understanding of how our county government serves all residents across all districts. So I'm really excited for the opportunity for this conversation. My hope is that we have some really robust civil discourse this evening with an eye toward learning from each other and appreciating both the differences between us and our closely held values, while also listening for the spaces where we and our values truly overlap. I'm incredibly proud to be from this place. I was born and raised in Douglas County, and I've told everyone everywhere else that I've lived, which isn't many places, and gone for years, that we know how to both build and live in community in Douglas County. I really believe that that's our shared value here. So let's start there. Now is a chance to build more community, not divide or segregate it. This is for all of us, and this is the county evolving with the evolution of our populace. We can and will bring even more positive changes together for the collective community that I know we all love. So thank you for showing up tonight. Thank you for spending your night with us. Please stay in conversation with us beyond tonight, because we have less than 30 days, or just about 30 days, to get these maps redistricted and sent on to the state. So thank you again. And Jamie Shew is going to give a presentation, and then we'll explain a little bit more about kind of next steps beyond his presentation.
Thank you, Commissioner. So this is a really cool moment. Some of you that I see in here started having conversations with me about 5-member districts like years ago, right? And I think for many of us, maybe we didn't think we'd get to this point, but we're at this point now. So this is a pretty cool moment. I'm going to go over kind of what the next steps are and kind of talk a little bit about these possible maps. These are not set in stone as the maps and kind of where they come from. But I do want to mention a couple of things. So first of all, many of you know me, know I'm from one of the smallest, most rural counties in Missouri. I've been here long enough that the Missouri isn't part of me anymore, okay? I washed it all off. And so I get where the impetus of this started, right? But now we're all here. In many of the conversations I've had over the past year, and I just noticed I didn't change the date from my first commission presentation, which was pretty much a year ago. A lot of the conversations that I've heard have been, how do I protect my area, or I don't want to be with that person. And so the one thing that I want to talk about is, we just went through redistricting as a state, and I think those of us in Lawrence and Douglas County can talk about how it felt that we became the football in redistricting. And where, because of politics and because of territory, we kind of got sliced up, pushed around, put in different districts. Those of you that are from, I want to talk about Wakarusa, but the Wakarusa Valley and the Wakarusa Township just got sliced up because that's where they kind of made the decisions between the first and the second House district. So we know what that's like. So I kind of challenge us that when we go forward with this, let's kind of look at this from a bigger picture. Douglas County's been around for 168 years. We get to be part of something that is much larger than any of us, because for 168 years we've had 3 commissioners, and now we're going to have 5. So we're going to have a conversation about what does that look like, and that's going to go past what, as long as any of us have been here. Some of you I know have had families that have been here for generations. You get to be the first generation that has 5-member districts. So that's pretty cool. So what does this look like? Well, I wanted to kind of take a moment and talk about the election. So this passed with about 61% of the vote. Some really cool statistics. So one of the things we look at in elections is called fall off. The farther you get down a ballot, people get tired of voting and they stop voting, right? And so one of my concerns with this ballot was you had all the judicial retention, you had the state questions, and then there was the county question, this little bitty question that was up there. So hopefully all the poll workers, when they gave it to you, said, hey, there's 3 questions, there's a county question right here, because I was worried that people would miss it. There was very limited fall off to the county question. 93% of the people who voted for like governor continued on to the county question. And that is not what happened with like the judicial retention. It was more like 70-some%. So 44,618 actually cast a vote for the county question. So that's pretty cool. The other thing, out of 114 precincts, 109 were yes. So this wasn't a county versus city, east versus west, north versus south. Only 5 precincts were no, 2 in the city of Lawrence, and 3 were in the county. The other part, the percentage of yes, no is pretty similar in the city and throughout every part of the county. If you look at it, it's not where you can look at a part of the county and say, well, they were at 75% yes, but other parts were 50%. It was about between 60 to 70% throughout the county. So what that tells me, what it tells the commissioners, what it tells you is this was supported throughout the city, throughout all the cities, throughout the county. So what are the next steps? So before January 1st, the Board of County Commissioners has to decide on a new map. There's been a lot of misinformation about this, that there has been a second step that the state has to approve the map, and that is actually not true. The Board of County Commissioners decides on this map, and that's the map, all right? What happens at the state level is after the map is done, then the governor, within 5 days, declares whether there'll be a new election for the new districts or whether the districts will just be decided in 2024 as far as who gets elected, right? That's the part that kind of happens at the state level. Leavenworth just went through this, so I've talked to the Leavenworth County Clerk quite a bit. She said that the governor at the time pretty much took what the recommendations of the county was. It's not where the governor's kind of making that decision. So some potential things to know. If there's a special election, then those people will serve until the 2024 election. And then in the 2024 election, there will be 4 county commissioners up for election. Districts 2 and 3 and districts 4 and 5. Then districts 4 and 5 will only serve for 2 years. So it'll become staggered terms, right? So districts 2 and 3 will then serve from 2025 to 2029. And then districts 4 and 5 would be 2025 to 2027. And then in 2026, we'll start the rotation of 1, 4, and 5 will always happen in one cycle, and 2 and 3 would happen in another cycle. If there's a special election, which would happen within 90 days of if the governor calls a special election, the chairs of all the parties would call a convention and they would choose candidates for those districts. Independent candidates could submit a petition of not less than 5% of the qualified electors in the new district. And then only the voters in those new districts would vote on those candidates. It would not be an all-county vote. I've heard some people say it would be an all-county vote. It would not. It would only be the voters within those new districts that would be part of that special election. So what does district size look like? What state law says is they have to be compact, contiguous, and as equal in population as possible. So 23,757 is the new ideal district for a commission seat. Right now it's about 38,000. So we've compacted these a little bit. Something to think about. Douglas County is 118,785 residents. Lawrence is 94,000 of that. Eudora 6,400, Baldwin City 4,800, Lecompton 588, and the unincorporated has 12,029. When you think about the maps, here's the things to know. Compact and contiguous. Contiguous, you can't have one part of a district over here. It's got to be connected to the other part in some way. Don't follow the legislature's example. And no offense to any of the legislators here, and make little roads and so forth, right? Let's try to keep it as contiguous as possible. Communities of interest is another thing that's talked about, is you want to keep your communities of interest together, right? So we don't really want to split Baldwin and Eudora to get to the right numbers, because you want to try to keep those communities of interest together. Kansas legislative research uses what's called a 5% deviation from the ideal number when they do redistricting. So that would mean that 5% deviation is that a district could be plus or minus about 1,100 people and still be within 5%. This is just my personal opinion, which is I think 1% is a better number to shoot for, to between 2 and 500. 1,000 is a pretty big deviation. But the one thing to know, we're using the numbers from 2020. Well, people have already moved, right? I've got a precinct in Northwest Lawrence that a couple years ago when I built it, it had 400 people. It now has 3,000 voters. They gained probably 500 voters from 2020 till now. So we're not trying to get to an exact number of 0 deviation, because it's just not, it's not realistic, right? Keep townships as whole as possible. So what the law says is that townships should stay as whole as possible. Plus, I think that keeps your communities of interest. That gets hard with Wakarusa, because you've got North Wakarusa, and then you've got South, East, and West Wakarusa. They're divided by the city of Lawrence. So it's really kind of hard to get Wakarusa within one commission district. But the goal would be that the rest of the townships try to stay as whole as possible within the commission districts. Precincts can be split, but I would really love if they're not. Because every time you split a precinct, you create a new ballot style. And so Wakarusa, I know I'm picking on Wakarusa, but in redistricting, they ended up with 10 different ballot styles, which meant in August they had 30 different ballots that they had to figure out who they go to. And so we can split precincts, but let's try not to, all right? The law says that you can revisit lines every 3 years. Most counties don't. But one thing for you to know as we go through this is we could revisit these lines in 3 years. Maybe not move the whole districts, but we could look and say, does that line need to move back and forth? So the law does allow us to revisit the lines every 3 years. Historically, counties don't, and Douglas County has not. Current county commissioners cannot be moved into the new districts. So districts 1, 2, and 3 must take into account the current member's residence. So what that means, and someone asked me about this, in the first district, precinct 23 has to stay in the 1st district. In the 2nd district, precinct 41, North Lawrence, has to stay in the 2nd district. And for the 3rd district, Willow Springs Township has to stay in the 3rd district. So, kind of real quick, the maps that you see are not, we kind of went back and forth on what we wanted to do about maps. And I think there needed to be some sort of starting point to talk about. This doesn't mean these are the maps. These are just starting points. And I worked with GIS. We have an amazing GIS department that built these maps. I am not this tech savvy, right? I would have had some crayons and colored these in. So what we kind of did was look at a couple things based off conversations that I've had with a number of people, right? I'm trying to pull up the maps right now. I just got done saying I'm not very tech savvy. All right. So where these maps kind of came from. So this first one that you see, and I didn't come up with really cool names. The legislature comes up with names like Ad Astra and stuff. I was pretty basic. So cities. I've heard from especially Baldwin and Eudora, what does a map look like where Baldwin and Eudora are not in the same commission district, all right? So that's where this map kind of comes from, which is, what if each one of the cities in our county was in kind of a different district? So that takes Eudora, Baldwin, and Lecompton into a county commission district. What that looks like is kind of with geography, Eudora's got to go towards North Lawrence, takes in East Lawrence, Baldwin kind of wraps around in through Clinton, and then Lecompton comes into West Lawrence, and then you have 2 commission districts that are in the city of Lawrence. So that's kind of what it looks like if you were to try to separate the cities. A big one that has been discussed is, what if there was an all-county district? So you had a district where no part of Lawrence is in that county commission district. That's what it would look like. All of that blue would be one county commission district. So basically, Grant Township would be the one place that would not be part of that. So you would end up with a district that basically has East Lawrence, North Lawrence, and Grant Township, 3 other all-city districts, and then one that takes in the rest of Douglas County. There has also been a lot of discussion about, well, can we build districts that include both the city of Lawrence and outside the city of Lawrence? So every district does. So for right now, District 1 sits all in the city of Lawrence. So one of the things lots of people have said is, what if each district had part of Lawrence and part of the county? So that's what this kind of looks like. I call it spokes. Could have been wagon wheel or something like that. But it kind of starts from the center and works its way out. It could be a lot of different ways that that's done, but this is what it would look like if you were to kind of also, this kind of a combination of cities and spokes, because you can see the cities are in their own kind of areas. So the last one kind of comes from, the first 3 came from conversations with a lot of you in the crowd. The last one kind of comes from my office in a way. So I've talked about Wakarusa. And one of the things that has really bothered me about redistricting has been how Wakarusa was split up so badly. And so what if we try to keep Wakarusa as whole as possible and not make them the place where we split everybody just like they did the House, the Senate, and so forth. And so this is why it's called Wakarusa. This right here keeps Wakarusa as whole as possible except for North Wakarusa, but also creates a second district that has a good portion of the county in it also. So you have 2 districts that are kind of a portion of the county. I didn't do this on purpose, but one thing that I do find interesting about this map is it includes Eudora, Baldwin, Southeast Lawrence, and the Wakarusa Valley, which are kind of the area that the Panasonic situation will probably impact the most. So you would have a commissioner that would kind of represent all of those, right? So, like I said, these are not, we didn't want it to be where you thought that this map, you had to choose between these 4 maps. But this was a conversation starter. So the next part of this is now, the goal is for you to kind of get together. We might need to add a couple more tables or something, but to have conversations about why are you here on a Thursday night? KU's playing, right? So what has it brought you here? Each one of you have a vested interest in this situation. So what is it that brought you here, right? What are the things that should be taken consideration? I mean, I threw these maps out based off what I've heard from many of you, but maybe you are a person that's like, no, I think that we should be thinking about this, right? What's the biggest concerns about drawing these lines, right, as a group? Each one of you, and I can see some of you are from Lawrence, some of you are from different parts of the county, you each have different interests that you bring to this table. And then what are other perspectives or information that we should have in this process? So that's kind of the next step, which is for you to start filling out things to kind of say, this is the things that we want kind of considered. And the commission does have a few weeks to decide this. So it could be that after this, with all of your feedback, you're like, none of these maps work, right? But based off all your feedback, here's another map. And I know some of you have been drawing maps, right? So this is also where you can kind of say, here's a map that I've been thinking about. These were just kind of a starting conversation based off things that you've talked to me about, all right? But this is not the final.